Hi, Bruce.
Hi, Carlo. How are you?
Great to have you, Bruce. What a privilege, my goodness. Who would have dreamed of it? Bruce Adolphe. And thank you for revealing to us some hidden secrets of Beethoven's sound world. I'm playing 4 sets of variations, including the famed Eroica variations, and one wonders, what's the theme officially? Which is the theme?
Yes. Well, Carlo, when you ask that, you're already asking a very complicated question. So let's back up just a touch and talk about variations, because a lot of people, when they think of Beethoven, if they're Beethoven fans, they think of the sonata or the symphony with the heroic element, the storytelling, the narrative. The theme usually goes through what a hero might go through, or a personage in a play or a movie. Goes through struggles and trials, but variations is completely different. In variations, the main theme, whatever it may be, is repeated and gets treated in different ways. And actually, you've got different sets of variations, because the simpler variations, the earlier variations of Beethoven, are more like ornamentation and development on the keyboard, almost like a fashion show. If the theme is a model, and then the model gets dressed in all kinds of clothing and jewelry. That's kind of the early style. But as Beethoven gets deeper into variations, instead of it being like a fashion show, it becomes almost like psychotherapy sessions, where you hear the theme each time it becomes more revealed, more open. You find out more about what's possible with it. It's like if you know somebody not well and you see them and you think of their clothing, that's the early kind of variations. But when you know someone well and you get to know them deeper and more profoundly as you get to know them, that's like the variations, let's say the Eroica variations.
Oh my goodness, that's so interesting, Bruce. Is that what Brahms picked on, this thematische Arbeit, the thematic development, which a theme is seen from all different angles?
Yes, well, Brahms, not to get too into Brahms, because we'll do that later, but of course Brahms is, you're referring to developing variations, which are both variations and development of sonata style at the same time. Of course, Beethoven actually did that as well, but with Brahms, it became his obsession. You know, if we take a look at the Eroica, first of all, it's important to realize that we call it now the Eroica variations, but he hadn't written the Eroica symphony yet. He wrote it right after this. And what's amazing is Beethoven was kind of obsessed with this little thing. You know, what's so amazing about that? And then we have this, and, you know?
Yes, and people jump on their seats.
Yes, and of course Beethoven loved people jumping. You know, when he improvised for the aristocracy, he would often play something very delicate and sweet and charming and lull them into quiet, and then he'd explode a big chord and shock them. And sometimes he would laugh at them. He would laugh at them for weeping. He would laugh at the audience, the aristocracy, for jumping out of their seats. You know, it reminds me, this kind of that we have in the Eroica variations, it reminds me of, in this piano sonata, you know? Yeah. But anyway, why did, you know, Beethoven, the first time he wrote this theme, and the theme that goes with it, you want to play a little bit of the other part of the theme, the melody?
Did you ask the other part of the theme or the other melody?
No, that's the part, with the two.
All right.
And then a little bit of this. So one of the amazing things about this is the first time he wrote both the bass line and the theme was in a little dance, number 7 of a set of little country dances that are extremely insignificant. And Beethoven then became obsessed with them and wrote the variations for piano. And then it became the final movement of the Eroica Symphony, again with even more variation and more astounding imagination attached to this simple little thing. And I think maybe he was obsessed with it because it captured a few of his really personal obsessions. For example, this is the silence around it, the quiet, and then the sudden piano. And you know, when you think about it, let's remember that Beethoven went deaf, and that his music somehow, even when it's funny, there's an obsession with loud and soft. And you can almost hear him saying, "What? I'm sorry, I can't hear you." And then somebody saying very loudly, first, and then they say, that, what do we,
oh my God, I wouldn't have dreamed of it.
Well, I'm not sure if it's true, but it's very interesting to think about it, you see, because he did lose his hearing, as we know, and we know that people would talk to him and he wouldn't hear them, and then they'd shout into his ear. And there is something both funny about this music, and also there's something serious and that we attach to Beethoven's deep personality of the loud and the soft, which exists in comical music by Beethoven and in very, very serious music by Beethoven. He never lets go of it all the way till the very end of his the late works, you know.
Bruce, it occurs to me, could it be Entschuldigung, Entschuldigung. Excuse me. Can you repeat, please?
Oh, I see.
God.
Well, you know, it's kind of like when he does this in the piano sonata.
Yeah.
It's several things at once. It's Beethoven shocking the listener in a calculated way, but it also is perhaps his experience of life over and over that he has turned into art. And this is just a guess, but guessing is part of what we do when we look back at the past and we don't have enough information. And we do know that he was obsessed with hearing, with losing his hearing, that he had a huge ear trumpet, that he had a thing built on his piano, a kind of resonator to make it louder. And there's something about trying to hear and then just screaming that just seems very Beethoven. And one of the other things about this that I find funny, or maybe not funny, but intriguing, is this. Right? That the three note ba ba bum that everyone always thinks of, which of course starts with the rest, ba 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 bum, and this is on the beat. But the three notes, as opposed to two, just think if it were, or four. Three notes is the only way to do this, because when you knock on a door too, you know, it's always three. There's something about three.
Yes.
And that part is part of the obsession. But the other thing is that little tune.
Well, can I say something, Bruce?
Yeah,
I heard it before. In a Clementi sonata.
Yes.
And also, and also this thing with the Clementi sonata, could it be that, well, this is a bit far-fetched, but he did love Clementi.
Yeah, yeah.
He did admire him a lot.
It's possible.
Some people call it the Eroica Sonata of Clementi because of the thing, just like this one. They call it the Zauberflöte. Maybe it's just a coincidence, just similarity of themes.
Yeah. Well, so the three notes is a way to drive energy. And, you know, Beethoven used the three notes, as you know, in many pieces of music, way before he came up with that. But one of the... yeah, exactly. And even before that, in this little C minor piano sonata, the early one, in the last movement. But basically, one of the differences...
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
You mean, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Doesn't that sound just like the Fifth Symphony?
Repeating notes.
Exactly, yeah.
Wow.
And it does exactly. But one of the differences with a set of variations and all of these other things we're talking about is that, as you know, they used to say it's fate knocking at the door. You know, bop, 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 bum. Right. And it's three notes and then the fourth. Bop, 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 bum. But the idea of knocking at a door in a story is part of the sonata and the symphony, but it isn't really part of variations. In variations, you just keep hearing the same idea in new guises, and as I said, either in a superficial way where it's not in the Eroica, but in the earlier works where it's more of a sense of decoration and fantastic imaginative piano writing. But then it goes from just being about the piano to being about the psychology of Beethoven. And how does that happen? How does music become the psychology? What is revealing of it? And part of it has to do with the continual level of surprise, of the sense of revealing yet another idea within the idea. And as we know with Beethoven, what's so remarkable is that he uses such simple material which allows great exploration, but he also, it allows you to see how deep the imagination is. But he also picks things that have something in them that, like in this case, it's when he first wrote the contra dance version, the folk dance version, it basically sounded like a folk song, you know, and this sort of does. You know, it could be a folk song, and most of the chords are just the two most basic chords, 1 and 5, and yet he's able to keep exploring deeper and deeper, both in terms of chromaticism, key elements, ornamentation. But with Beethoven, he inverts the idea of ornamentation. Even a trill sounds like a brilliant idea, like a new concept, as opposed to just a decoration.
Well, I found something towards the end. Also, as if this lower embellishment had been introduced the bar before. Perhaps this is thematische Arbeit. I thought it was far-fetched, but from what you're saying, I was probably right.
Yeah, well, I think so. And also, since you're playing the work and studying it and getting to know it, probably the things that occur to you are true because you are deeply inside the work, which is very different than just listening to a piece of music. Carlo, I'm just wondering, when you play variations, how is that different from playing a sonata? We've been talking about the different kind of storytelling versus going deeper into something. Does it feel different to keep starting over? You know, the theme keeps returning?
Well, let's say it depends on the set of variations. For instance, it occurs to me and to some other people, and possibly to you, that's a question that I addressed to you. The C minor variations, and so also because of the stress on the second beat of the bar, could it be Beethoven's chaconne?
It is a chaconne, yeah.
Here it's even a passacaglia.
Yeah.
I can tell you this. To the extremes are the F major variations, opus 34. Each variation with its own tempo, in its own key.
Yeah.
And the C minor variations in which I try to keep a steady basic pulse. Okay, you know, some people wonder, can we change tempo? The argument against not changing tempo is that why would then Beethoven write li stesso tempo? That's li stesso.
No.
I feel
you're right.
I feel there is more of a teleological build-up of a story in the variations, except for the C minor variations. These ones, to me, feel like I am telling a story. I mean, as in a sonata, of course, it's not the main areas of the sonata. We don't call it now first and second theme. We probably call it, main theme and secondary theme. But yeah, it feels quite different. But with Beethoven, it always feels that he's trying to get to a point.
Yeah, when you mentioned the F major sonata that you are playing, I mean variations. You are playing those variations that they change key. The theme is in F, then it goes to D and B flat and G. And then finally C minor and back to F. That's exploring of keys is the opposite of what he does later, where he just intensifies one key and gets deeper and deeper into it. I think it was an experiment. But what's interesting is that the Schumann fantasy, must have been influenced by that, because the Schumann fantasy drops in thirds in a similar way in the third movement. It's kind of, I think it was kind of influenced by that idea, because when Beethoven changed key by thirds in every variation, that was an extremely romantic and unusual.
Do you think this C minor variations, is it a funeral march? Is it somehow, will the Eroica Symphony be linked to that? Because it all happens in those years between 1802 and 1808. That's incredible. Could it be?
I think so, yes, because as we saw with the Eroica theme, the bass line and the tune, Beethoven does become obsessed with musical ideas, and I think that he's always exploring new paths, new directions with the same idea. So he doesn't repeat himself in terms of the pieces don't have the same purpose. They always go further along a path, and so sometimes he'll take, like in that case, a funeral march idea, and it keeps coming back in his work and exploring it further and deeper and deeper. Absolutely.
So the Schumann fantasy, C, A, F.
Yeah.
A relationship of thirds, we'll see in Schubert, when we'll have a chat on Schubert.
Yes. Well, of course, all of this, though, is Beethoven's F major variations is very unusual in that it does that.
Very unusual, yes.
There are some pieces that drop in thirds in development sections by Haydn. And of course, Beethoven was very, very well aware of those things. But you know, one of the other things about variations, just to bring it back to a general way of looking at it, is if you think of the theme as an actor, that in a sonata or a symphony sonata movement, the actor is acting a story, like Hamlet or Macbeth or Romeo and Juliet. You know, it's the character going through a story. But in variations, it's as if the actor can come out and do one monologue after another from different plays. First they do Macbeth, then something from Hamlet. You know, so they're each different, but it's the same actor with a different costume and a different mood and a different script. And yet they all fit together in an evening of getting to know this particular actor and the range and abilities of that actor. Which is,
you know, Bruce, this puts me in mind, you know, I'm a big fan of Harold Bloom, the literary critic who passed away, sadly. He fantasized a story with Don Quixote and Faust together. Can you imagine this? Two different characters by the same actor played. Could this be Beethoven sometimes? Perhaps in these variations, perhaps not in these variations, to try to encompass human experience retroactively and put it all together in a sonata form, which, by the way, was only coined sonata form in 1845.
Of course, right.
And yet it had been exploited in all possible ways.
Right. And,
sorry, maybe I was a bit too far-fetched, perhaps, putting literature into a sonata. Also, it puts me in mind of the hero's journey.
Yes, yeah.
The sonata.
Well, that's why anyway. I like the idea that this program has no sonatas on it. That
it was about time.
Yeah. Well, you know, since it's very different to think about variations, and Beethoven became obsessed with variations more and more, because he did write quite a few at the beginning, but when he first started writing variations in Vienna, it really was because there was a market for piano variations. People would buy them and play them. So he wrote a lot of little piano variations that we don't play anymore, that he didn't give opus numbers to, before the F major. Little variations just for money, to be popular. And then the F major is a turning point, and then even more, of course, opus 34, Opus 35, these are huge turning points in Beethoven's musical life, and he gave them opus numbers, and he also wrote to his publisher, these are the beginning of the new Beethoven. I have a new voice, and I've discovered a new aspect to the composition. And then he comes back, and you have variations in the Ninth Symphony, and variations in Opus 131, and in Opus 109 and Opus 111. These are late works, you know, the late piano sonatas, late string quartets, late symphony. He became obsessed with fugue, which occurs here also, and variation. And in a way, variation sets the mind freer than any other so-called form, because you just keep revisiting the same idea and getting deeper and deeper into it. like Bach's Goldberg variations, like his Beethoven's later Diabelli variations. It's really remarkable.
Well, of course, he goes back to the theme in the Opus 76 variations, just like Bach does with the quadlibet. Yeah,
it helps
that
you.
Could have been an imprint.
It helps you understand where you've been to come back and say, "Oh yeah, that's where I started from."
Yeah.
That when the theme comes back, it's like looking at a photograph of your childhood now. You know, you've been through so much. You say, "Oh, that's what I was like when I started this." It's kind of fun.
Bruce, we cannot thank you enough. This was really, we say here, a lectio magistralis.
Great.
That's
a great word.
Really a master's lecture, and it opens perspectives, and it's as only you can do. This is really depth, unpretentious depth, and going into the profundity of music in a very natural, intelligent way.
Thank you, Carlo.
What wit have you prepared for us?
I have one of my piano puzzlers, and obviously it's going to be in the style of Beethoven, and that's maybe
we will not tell what the tune is.
Right, and so I'll just play it, and we'll see what happens.
Bravo. Well, you even inserted a recitativo, and that's as Beethovenian as it can get.
Yeah, and also
Maestro.
What we were talking about, the little silence in the explosion.
Yes, of course. Maestro, we're going to miss you immensely until next episode, which will be on Scarlatti.
Yes, oh yes.
And my God, yes, it's been boiling in my head for years and years and years, all these fingerprints by Scarlatti. We'll talk about it next month.
Okay, great.
And we're immensely grateful, Bruce.
Thank you.
And
Well, this
really
is
look
fun.
forward. It is fun and useful, I think.
Good.
It is a great privilege.
Well, thank you for asking me. I'm really enjoying doing this, and it's when you're in a lockdown, sort of. We're not quite, but we're all home and wearing masks and things. It's really nice to reach out across international waters, and I would be much happier to travel over there, but it's nice to do this.
You will. Well, we're waiting for you, as we say here, braccia aperte, with open arms. This is, can we call it a blessing in disguise?
I might be going too far.
Okay, but this has forced us to find solutions to be in touch and to annihilate distances.
I think it shows, it's like variations. The pandemic has showed how else can we do what we do? What are some of the variations on connecting and being together that we can find?
Great. Thank you so much, Maestro.
Thank you. Thank you, Carlo.
See you soon. See you very soon.
Yes.
Many blessings.
Thank you.